Redundancy can save your life and greatly increase your capabilities as a public servant. Stick around. Now, redundancy doesn't sound exciting or cool, but what does sound pretty good to me is a more positive status, existence, and performance of public service. And that is a beautiful thing. It is worth the work. Here's a quick 4-question quiz. Now just answer to yourself, but kind of remember your answers for later. Question number 1. Is it important for a public servant to know their pursuit policy? Question number 2, is there value in being able to perform a trauma-informed interview? Question number 3, should a peace officer be familiar with search and seizure laws? Question number 4, should a person who wears a service weapon to work know precisely when they can use that? As a public servant, when you have time, distance, and cover, redundancy may not be as important. However, when you're on the front lines and those high trauma situations, those high stress situations present themselves, as they will, redundancy is an important friend to you. Opportunities for redundancy exist in training, in your times at bat, in visualization, and your experience on the front lines. Here's an example of how redundancy can pay dividends for you. Let's say you go out on a hike into an area that you know is highly populated by bears or other animals that can attack you. Would you want 1 layer of protection? Would you want 2 layers of protection? Or would you want to be redundant with multiple layers of protection that you may never need, but that one time you're going to be glad you were redundant? Would anyone go to a hospital and be perfectly content knowing that the hospital staff will violate HIPAA laws, has never seen an affliction that you have, has no experience with setting bones or calming down family members? Would anyone want to call a fire department when their house is on fire and be perfectly content when the firefighters trip over the hoses, don't know how to hook them up, and seem generally incompetent? Of course not. No one would. That's where redundancy comes in for us. The public that relies on us is expecting redundancy. Now, they may not even know what that means to us, but that background redundancy is what makes us appear professional, knowledgeable, and capable. Now, experience and muscle memory for us as public servants is so important to the people that we serve. Think of redundancy as part of a circular action. It starts with training. Training leads to redundancy. Redundancy leads to muscle memory. And when you have muscle memory, you know what you do? You go back all around, you start training again. You reinforce that redundancy, and that redundancy reinforces your muscle memory. And it goes around and around. We have a finite amount of time to be public servants. In other words, we're not going to be doing this all our lives. Sometimes we have one shot to get things right. There are many examples of how redundancy, or the lack of redundancy, turns into wonderful outcome or horrific outcome. Here's a story about a lack of redundancy. Matter of fact, I'll tell you 2 stories. The first one, when I was on the shooting team and we investigated officer-involved shootings, there came an occasion where, for purposes of a report, we had to include this particular agency's shooting policy. Well, imagine our surprise and our embarrassment when we called that agency and 2 of its highest ranking administrative members didn't know what their shooting policy. Well, if they don't know it, how are the road officers supposed to know it or expect to know it? That's one example of a lack of redundancy. And there's another example of redundancy. Somebody goes into an academy, a police academy, and during this academy, obviously they're learning how to use their service weapon. Well, through the use of a drill, in this drill, the idea was to use your shotgun until it was out of ammunition. And once that shotgun was out of ammunition, the drill dictated that you transition to your service weapon. Well, this particular cadet, who was first in line, also had to deal with the fact that they were playing loud music, there was loud noises, there was yelling, and they were expected to perform this drill. The drill started out just fine, where the cadet emptied his shotgun until it was out of battery. Then he transitioned to his service weapon. He pushed that service weapon out in front of him, straight, accurate, on target, and begins to squeeze the trigger. Well, there's only one problem. Nothing happens when the cadet squeezes the trigger. So he squeezes it again. Same result, nothing happens. His weapon is not firing. And then in his ear, he hears the instructor shout, "Stop, stop, red, red, red. Don't move, cadet." And as this cadet has his arm extended out in front of him, the instructor says, "Look at your hand." And the cadet looks at his hand and realizes there's no weapon in his hand. Then the instructor instructs the cadet to look down at his duty belt, and he sees, what do you think? His duty weapon, safely holstered. What this cadet forgot due to the stress was that he was extending out his right hand. This cadet was left-handed. So the lack of redundancy, the lack of repetitions, the lack of muscle memory, the lack of training, in that this was the first time he had done this drill, was a dire message of the importance of redundancy. That cadet was me. And all the days, all the moments, all the years, all the decades leading up to that time in the academy, I was always left-handed, yet that stress caused me to believe that I was right-handed. Lack of redundancy. Redundancy is a fail-safe for you during stressful or traumatic situations, due to the fact that some functions will be greatly diminished or compromised. Some of these functions that will be compromised are your fine motor skills, the loss of your field of vision, known as tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, also being tethered to that adrenaline leash, and tachypsychia, where time seems to stand still or can speed up. There have been times in my career where I felt we trained too much, and then something would happen where in the back of my mind I was so glad that we had trained as much as we did, so much that it became redundant. In the comments below, let me know other things where redundancy can be a very positive thing for you. Now let's take another quiz. This one's a little different than the first one. There's only 4 questions again. Question number 1, do you know by heart pursuit policy and the parameters of when you can and cannot pursue somebody? Question number 2, do you know how to conduct a trauma-informed interview? Most of the people we encounter are different than we are. Their experiences and their past and their motivations are very different than where we come from, and it's important that we are capable of meeting them on their terms and not expecting them to adopt our terms. Question number 3, are you intimately familiar with search and seizure laws? Do you respect the importance of the 4th Amendment of the Constitution? And question number 4, are you intimately familiar, and when I say intimately, I mean life or death familiar with your agency's shooting policy and when you can and cannot use ultimate force against another human being? For me in my career, those boxes, I always knew exactly what they were. And there's only one time in my career I checked all of those boxes, but that's a story for another video. So tell me, how did you do on that quiz? If you answered yes to all of those questions, I will tell you that redundancy is probably a strong ally to you. If you answered no to one or all of those questions, then we have some work to do, which is fine, because as public servants, we should not be afraid of a little hard work. And at the end of that redundancy, who profits? Who is made better or whole? The people out there on your beat, within the purview of your service. They are the ones that benefit. And what can redundancy do for you? Man, there are so many benefits. It can free you up so that your mind can engage in other things because of that redundancy, that muscle memory that it creates, and that training cycle. You don't have to guess all the time, what do I do in this scenario? What do I do in that scenario? You should know already going into that, or at least have a very, very good idea. You should have a plan that is multiple layers deep, but that only comes through redundancy. Redundancy is not a captivating or attractive term, but for us as public servants, it is vitally important. We don't just shoot at the range one time and call it good. We don't drive the emergency vehicle operations course 1 or 2 times and think, well, good enough. We don't take active shooter training one time and say, I'm now an expert. No, that's because we are expected to do so many things, to learn so many things, and to be competent in so many areas that it has to be that continuous cycle, training to redundancy, which leads to muscle memory. And what do we do when we've achieved muscle memory? Why, we go back in line, start with that training, get redundant again, and reestablish that muscle memory. Redundancy can be the difference between somebody who just shows up to work, clocks in, and collects a paycheck, or it can mean that you are a public service that is highly capable highly valued, highly respected, and has a high level of reward in your career. And that is a worthy, noble, and beautiful thing. My public servants, don't be afraid of redundancy. Next time you are signed up for training or you're expected to do training, meet it head on with a smile, knowing that that redundancy is absolutely required for you so that you can help others. If you're getting something out of these videos, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'd like to hear what you're thinking about redundancy. Maybe it's different in your agency. Maybe it's different in your part of the States or wherever you're tuning in from. Let's share those ideas so that we can all be better at what we do. I want you to get outside the norm of it's good enough. I want you to be responsible for recreating the perception of law enforcement in the eyes of the public. Redundancy can help you reshape the perception, effectiveness, and capabilities of law enforcement in general. You can make a case for the fact that it's hard to be a public servant in this day and time, and I won't disagree with you. But what I will say counter to that is you have so much power and capability when it comes to your outlook on that. Stay busy training, stay busy serving, stay busy refocusing your mind and engaging in habits that by benefiting you will directly benefit the people we serve. Redundancy will help you get outside the norm. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get outside and let's get that work done.